thanks for joining us again. My name's Anthony and I am on the leadership at Lighthouse Church. Welcome back to our second episode of In Conversation. We've decided to go down the route of exploring the book of the Psalms, and the Psalms is broken up into 5 parts, and I'm going to take a psalm from each part each week. This week we've decided to go with Psalm 3, and with me I have Natalie McGill as my guest. When I mentioned to Natalie that we were going to do Psalm 3, she seemed to be really excited that it was that particular psalm. So Natalie, would you be up for telling us why Psalm 3 was so exciting for you?
I love Psalm 3. For me, Psalm 3 in my Bible was highlighted already. Especially I'm working through the Passion Translation just now. I love it, and I love so many of the Psalms because for me, King David is just so relatable. And that's what I love about him. You know, you see him at his lowest, you see him high, and you get to really journey with him. So in this one, it feels like reading it feels like you're watching all of his life and the purpose of it for this very moment, you know, for this moment of I'm crying out to you, God. So yeah, I love it. Great psalm.
Yeah, it's like you see his whole life summed up in this one psalm, because the flow kind of goes from hopelessness to hope to security to petitioning, and then just being blessed by God and wanting others to be blessed through him as well.
Total journey in this, like in these 9 lines or whatever. It's crazy.
In the first 2 verses, it talks about how many are his foes, how many rise up against me, and many are saying for me, God will not deliver him. And it was that the word many that stood out to me, how there's so much coming against David, but if we were to think of that and apply that to our own lives, we might not have foes like other kings wanting to, I don't know, take our kingdom or whatever, but we might have people saying mean stuff about us, or people that don't believe in us, and people are saying like, you know, God won't deliver you from this, or what good is God, or, you know, God's a load of nonsense. You know, people will just talk God down to you and basically saying God won't deliver you. But what I like is towards the end, in fact the second last line, it says from the Lord comes deliverance, and how people can say what they want, but ultimately God has the ultimate say.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And as well, I think I feel like I can relate it because we can have people that come against us. We've got that physical sometimes battle. The spiritual battle always is believing the lies as well that come against us. And I love that everybody, so many people thought, you know, God will not deliver him. You know, he's not going to help him. He's not going to stand in. And David is just so secure. He's like, my God's going to come. He's my shield. And I don't doubt it. And I think that's where, for me, the journey and everything he went through beforehand got him to this point where he was standing firm in his faith. And I just love that about David. You know, he just knew who God was.
Yeah, I know that for me, when I was growing up, I wouldn't imagine that anything I was going through as a child and as a teenager would be equipping me for now. But that's what it was with David. Like, as a teenager, as a shepherd, he's learning to lead, he's learning to protect, and he's learning to defend. And that's kind of what he has to do as he's calling, so to speak.
It was great. I love it because you could see that, you know, before the battle of Goliath, you know, like God had him training him at that point as well, just being a shepherd boy out and about. So you can see that, and then it comes to this point of this psalm where you can see where he's been prepped for this moment in time as well.
Yeah, like so often we can have a time in our life where we think it's just insignificant, or there's something we're going through, and no matter, like if it's something really difficult, we get really annoyed and frustrated with it, which is obviously normal to get frustrated with the frustrating things. But sometimes we fail to see that it could be a time of equipping or a time of training.
Like I feel personally myself, I have grown the most through the hardest times I've went through. And it always, I was speaking to one of my friends about this the other day, it always determines my path and how my heart is at that point. You know, am I willing to be like, okay, God, I trust you, I don't know what you're doing, but I will go this way, or am I going to walk my way and do what I want? And I love that you see later on, David is just like, where else am I going to go? God, I trust you, you know, you're my shield. And that clearly is what directs his path.
It's like a total state of mind. I don't know about you, given your line of work, you probably have had to do it a few times, but going into a meeting that you're maybe not looking forward to, you can go into it with you can go into this meeting really pessimistic about it and gearing yourself up for a fight, or you can speak truth over a situation, you know, saying my God is my shield, he's where my peace and my shelter and my comfort comes from. And you can posture your mind into such a way that you're going to look up and you're going to be positive about it. It still might not make it more comfortable, but it, like what you were saying, how we point our heart, wherever we posture our heart, totally determines the outcome of the situation we're in, or at least determines how we manage it.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. In the first two verses, I labelled it as hopelessness and loneliness and lies, because when people are talking smack about you, it's not a nice place to be in. It's not. You do begin to feel lonely, especially if you're in a position like David's in, a position of leadership. It can be quite a lonely place because, you know, there would only be one king. You know, he's not co-king. He's only by himself, and so nobody really can understand or empathise where he's coming from, except for the King of Kings. You know what I mean? So only God can empathise with him. So he can only call on God for help and guidance. But the first word of verse 3, it says "but," and I've got that circled in big red pencil. But because he's going from loneliness and the lies, he's decided not to partner with them. He's saying, "But you, Lord, are a shield around me, my glory, the one who lifts my head high." And it's that one. You know, there's all this stuff coming in, all these people saying stuff against them. If we apply it to our own lives, it could be social media, you know, everything that distracts us or everything that gets us down. But there is only one God that is above it all. So I like at the start of verse 4, it says, "I call out to the Lord, and he answers me from his holy mountain." And then in verse 7 it says, "Arise, O Lord." And both of these are calling out. You know, it's leaving humility behind and inviting God into the situation, and acknowledging that God can deal with it better than what we can. In verse 5 it says, "I lie down and sleep, I awake again, because the Lord sustains me." And I like how it says, I awake again because the Lord sustains me, rather than I awake again and the Lord sustains me. It's like we don't have to force ourselves to get out of bed in the morning. That's the imagery I get. Like, God gives us the power to get out of bed, if that makes sense. It's like it's I get out, I awake again, and the Lord sustains me. That's like we're having to drag ourselves up, having to prop ourselves up on our own strength. But it says, because I have the strength of God, I can awake.
It's good. I like this picture, you know, like through this really hard time, he's at rest because of who his father is to go to sleep, you know. When like you read in the Old Testament, you know, sleeping is like a gift or a blessing from God, for your body to rest and not fear. This psalm is one of my favourites. It reminds me of there's a scene, and I think it's in Prince Caspian in Narnia, where Lucy is at one side of the bridge and the enemy is at the other, and she's standing there with this tiny wee dagger, and they're just laughing at her like, what are you going to do with this dagger? Like, you're not going to attack us with that. And they come running at her, and then up beside her comes Aslan, and they like pause all of a sudden, because you know, like Aslan's God in Narnia. So, and it's just the pure beauty of that picture of God being beside someone and her feeling, you know, my dad has got me in this. It's like one of the most stunning pictures, and for me, Psalm 3 kind of reminds me of that in that way.
Yeah, it's a nice image, because like if we're like the little child, like Lucy being like a little child, and we've got our wee swords, you know, we've got our wee knowledge base, we've got our ways of protecting ourselves, but ultimately the power comes from Aslan, the power comes from God, and
I like that as well, because you can see David uses it throughout his life as well. You know, Lucy was not afraid. She was about to take on this army with this tiny wee sword. And David, you can see through his life and through his trust and building on that, it's through his worship and, okay, I know who my God is. You know, I do not doubt that he's going to deliver me and stand up for me. So powerful. Love it.
Yeah, like with God, he equips us to be like that, because like David had faith that God knows what he's doing, and David had faith in the power of God and in the truth of God, and that's what gave him confidence to get up again in the morning. That's what gave him the confidence to say, my Lord is my shield. Yeah,
and he was so good. Like for me, I take such example from David. You know, he was so good at delighting himself in the Lord. So in the times when it was hard, he would go back to a time where God delivered him and use that as a stepping stone to stand on. Like if I was going into a journey and there was going to be fear within it, I'll be like, okay, God, do you remember that time you took me to the middle of Africa and I stood there only because of you? And I love that about it. You know, he just delights himself in the Lord so much in this psalm.
Yeah, it's a great image about delighting ourselves in the Lord, because it's so important that we remember that life isn't all doom and gloom. You know, there is the good parts of life, but we have to invite God into our hearts even when it's not going easy peasy. We do have to remember the joy of the Lord and remember that he makes all things work for our good. In verse 5, after he awakes again, he says, the Lord sustains me. That word sustain, I really love it, because he keeps us going. You know, he doesn't let us down at all. He doesn't put us down so that he can have a rest. He's not like, I just need 5 minutes. That way, come on, give me 5 minutes. You know, it's like, I'm going to sustain you. You know, when you can't keep yourself going, I'll keep you going. And that word as well, it's if you look at a concordance, it's used a lot in Leviticus when the priests are putting their hand on people. You know, they'll put their hand on someone to give a blessing or to remove sin or for forgiveness, but the word sustain is related to a blessing. You know, there's always more in it. So it's not like he's going to sustain us in a difficult time and we're just going to keep feeling difficult, but we're going to grow out of that difficult time as well.
Yeah. And then it goes on to talk about, in the Passion Translation, it's headed up the secret of strength. And I think I love this bit so much and relate to it, because there's been so many times where I have been on my knees crying out to God, because I know that he's the only one that can step up for me and step in for me. And I love that about David. And also just the absolute lack of pride, you know, and the trust that, you know, I don't have anything else to give. I'm literally on my knees, trusting you that it is you. And that's just like the most beautiful picture to me. I love it.
Yeah, it's like leaving our pride behind and just realising that we don't have it all under control.
Yeah, that's it. And he knows what's there. Because I mean, he goes like to talk about attacking his enemies and stuff like that, doesn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, if I was like that and God listened and did it, I would have had so many people dead by now.
I know. It's dangerous. It's dangerous. Thank goodness for grace.
That's it. That's so true.
Like,
So true.
because in verse 7 he's like, strike my enemies onto the jaw, break the teeth of the wicked. And then verse 8 it says, from the Lord comes deliverance. So it's like, we can ask for whatever we want, you know, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's what we're going to get. Because God's not a wishing well, you know.
Yeah.
We don't just, or a slot machine, we don't just put in a penny and out comes a prayer. You know, it's God's got his own mind.
Thank you, he's a wise father. And then in verse 8, for me, I love this point because it says, the Passion Translation says, my true hero comes to my rescue, for the Lord alone is my saviour. What a feast of favour and bliss he gives his people. And I think to me it shows how good a leader David is, because he's not just thinking of himself, he's not stuck in this kind of phase. He is like, okay, my people, you know, God, it's for us, it's for this nation. He loved his nation, and that just emphasises how good a leader he was to me. Yeah,
it's so good because it just shows that lack of arrogance and the presence of humility, because he, even though he's going through this difficult time, he was still looking out for other people.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy for us to go into self-preservation mode during a time of difficulty. You know, we might just shut everybody else out and just want to focus on ourselves a little bit. You know, it's okay to have a bit of self-care, but so long as that's not at the detriment of others.
Yeah, I remember one of the most powerful lessons I'd ever learned in Africa when there was one day and I was really sick, like really sick, and I came into the living room and I'm lying on the couch and I was past the kind of sick point, but I was feeling ugh, and my dad was just like, you need to get your eyes off yourself and get out there. There's like hundreds of folk literally within a couple of meters of you. And I remember being like, oh no, but I feel terrible. But I eventually went out, and as I went out and took my eyes off myself and prayed with other people and spent time with people and loving them, you know, it completely lifted. So there was so much power in it, and I love that David crying out to God, you know, there's power in that, but also vision for his nation and prayer for his nation, and having them at the forefront of his head, so much power in that.
Yeah, like, love isn't easy. Like, it's, I mean, I don't think Jesus done his sacrifice. I don't think the sacrifice Jesus made was easy peasy. You know, I think, and the word does say he found it difficult. He even asked God if it was God's will, take the cup from him. But
I guess when you're sweating blood, it's probably really hard.
Aye, that's not a good sign. That's not the sign of relaxation.
No.
It's not what I do to relax. But like, love isn't love unless it's for everybody. It's not just love if it's for the people you like.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense. So David here, even though he's going through this tough time, he's still showing love and he's still wanting other people to be blessed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In verse 1 and 2, you know, I labelled it hopelessness, lies and loneliness.
Mm-hmm.
How often, if we're going through a tough time, do we just camp there? And we kind of have a bit of a pity party, and we don't really, I mean, sometimes we do, but it's very easy for us to not move on from there.
Yeah.
And we'll just let ourselves be miserable about it. You know, we'll justify it by saying, these are my feelings and I'm entitled to feel them. Well, yeah, but move on. You know, we're not designed to just sit and be sad about things. In verse 3, there is that big but, where he did start to declare the truth. And like when you weren't well, there was that big but of you just getting off the sofa and getting out there. You know, you were feeling sad, but I can move past this.
Yeah.
I really enjoy this psalm because it's like it's a roller coaster ride of David's whole life summed up into one wee psalm, which is 8 verses long, but it's like his whole life. But it ends with him acknowledging the truth and the power of God. And I think that's something that's really important for us to take away and remember, that whatever we're going through at the minute, the whole world is going through this isolation. We need to remember and say, but my Lord is my shield. And we need to remember the truth and the power of God, that we're going to get past this.
I really, really would love, imagine the church on its knees right now crying out like David is, though.
It'd be so good.
Wouldn't it change generations and churches and vision? And if we were this hungry and this, desperate, would we be there?
I mean, it's such a great opportunity to kind of shake the tree and let the fruit fall out,
So true. And if harder things have to come away for that to happen, then, let it be.
But everything good takes effort.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to be willing to put in that effort. I know I am.
Yeah. No.
Although having said that, it's very easy to say I'm willing to put in the effort, but when God comes to you with something, I need you to move to the desert. I don't know if that's going to be easy.
Let me just share that. Wait for the prophetic words.
Sorry, what was that? I didn't quite hear that. Sorry. Move to the deserts? Yeah, I can do that. No problem. Hallelujah. Thank you, Father. So, thank you, Natalie, for being my wonderful guest today. I really appreciate it. I love your input. You've got some really amazing imagery there. I would just like to end on a prayer, if that's okay. Father, I just thank you that you are the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. I thank you that you are over all. I thank you that many might be our foes, but you are the one God who is over all. I thank you that you are our shield. I thank you that you are my glory. And I thank you that you sustain me and that you will give me rest. And I thank you that you are secure, you are powerful, and you are where truth comes from. We just declare your holy name over this land of Scotland. We declare your name over Britain, and we declare your name of peace and truth over the world. We just thank you, Father, for your never-ending love, support, and wisdom. We just bless your holy name, Father, in Jesus' precious name. Amen. And thank you all for watching. Tune in next week where I will have another guest and another psalm. God bless.